Hi everyone. Welcome to PHYE 3 or 513, and I know that you probably have lots and lots of questions about what's going on, and I just want to say to you, I hope you are all doing well, and I do think we are going to make it through this. Um, so I'd like to, if I could, kind of talk to you about what's coming up. All right. You will have the PowerPoint, but just as a reminder, we're going to try to meet on Zoom as often as we can. So I'm going to offer you the opportunity. It's not a requirement, but it's an opportunity for you to meet on Zoom Mondays and Fridays, 2 to 2:30. If you have questions, comments, whatever you want. I'm not going to try to change much of anything else we've done, try to keep it the same, but just give you some reminders. So here's an example. This is what's going on. We're going to meet via Zoom. Your quizzes are still going to be online. Your discussion questions are still going to be done. But what I've done is I've actually added or changed, because we're so large of a class, I want you to be able to have a small engagement with another group. So I've reduced your groups. So you'll be working with a group of 3 to 5 students, and you'll be responding to each other in your discussions. Now, I do want to get into some of the things that are coming up, just as a reminder. So we're going to look at position paper, your interview, and your social psych article. So let's talk about it. So your position paper, based on the articles that we've had, any of the readings, any of the videos, and everything you've done, I want you to answer this question. Do you agree that sports build character in individuals and teams? I want you to write a position paper incorporating personal experiences and 3 peer-reviewed articles. And you're going to research your argument. Now, your argument should be 4 to 6 pages, APA format. There's details on Canvas. You're going to present it. That's the one thing we're going to change, is you're going to actually present it to us. But for this week, all you have to do is begin this process by creating an outline explaining your position and giving 2 references. I know we'll talk a little bit later about this, but you do need to interview a coach, an exercise, or a physical education instructor. And you need to interview them and ask them questions about social psychology, the social psychological issues, what their philosophy is, their beliefs, their people situations that have shaped their philosophy, etc. Um, and I suggest you consider recording it so you have some ideas on what you're going to do. You can look at the format online. The final application is going to be an applied article, and you're going to choose from the topic that you find interesting. Today we're going to look at personality, motivation, attitude, intensity, participation, conformity, and you are going to write an article for a paper or a magazine or whatever you want. All right, so that's what's coming up. We're going to try as best we can to stay as normally close to the schedule as possible. Please, please, please get online and see me Monday 2 to 2:30 and or Fridays 2 to 2:30. All right, today we're looking at personality and attitude. I did post for your discussion some interesting video. I really like the video on personality and attitude about athletes. So, but to start, when we look at personality and attitude, there's a story in your book, and it's on page 198, and it says, Brenda Epperson is a 45-year-old divorcee who has the reputation of being everywhere in town. Her friends call her the mayor since she seems to know and be friendly with almost everybody she meets. Whether it's in the grocery store, or a coffee shop, or a restaurant, she has something engaging to say to those she encounters. Now, Sheila Belichick is also the same age as Brenda, single with a similar educational background. But in contrast to Brenda, Sheila prefers to spend her free time reading mystery novels, doing some writing of her own. As has been established in previous chapters, there's a lot of different factors that go along and that contribute to their behaviors. To the extent that Brenda's and Sheila's patterns of behavior are internally consistent and distinctive, personality and social psychologists are likely to regard these patterns as reflections of their personalities. And as you watch that video, I just find it interesting because my son loves soccer. And we talked about Lionel Messi and Ronaldo and the differences between Lionel Messi and his introvertedness and Ronaldo's extroversion. So we're going to think about how does what we do affect our personality, and how does our personality affect our leisure pursuits. So in bunches of stuff I talked about. Personality or found. Personality is this character or blend of characteristics that make a person unique. It's based on our psychological core, our typical responses, and our role related behavior. So when you look at this, we're really looking at what's internal, our psychological core, who we are. This is where our traits are. We're looking also at it's constant, your psychological core. Then you look at your responses. How do you respond? We respond differently when it depends on our social environments. So, are you the same person at both environments? And then we look at role related behaviors. So, we look at what defines us and what are our roles. I'm a mom, I'm an educator, I'm a sister, I'm a wife, etc. So, the psychological core is the most basic and deepest values, interests, attitudes, and motives, and our self worth as a person. So, this is who we are. So, like a person's religious values. Our typical response may be the way that we adjust or respond to the environment. So maybe we're happy go lucky, or maybe we're shy. Looking at our role related behaviors, this is how we act in a particularly social situation. So, your behavior as a student, a parent, and a friend. So, again, looking at your roles, looking at your typical responses really is dependent on that psychological core. Are you, it's your attitudes, deep attitudes, your values or interests, your motives and patterns of behavior. This is the real person. So I found some different approaches to understanding behavior, and I thought I'd briefly go through them with you. So the psychodynamic approach is behaviors determined by several unconscious, constantly changing factors that often conflict with one another. So we place an emphasis on understanding the person as a whole rather than identifying isolated traits. Now, looking at that, research says that it has little influence and it hasn't been adopted in most sport psychology. The weakness of this psychodynamic approach is that it focuses almost entirely on internal determinants of behavior, giving little attention to the social environment at all. Its contribution is that it increases awareness that the unconscious determinants of behavior exist. The next one is called the trait approach. The behavior is determined by relatively stable traits that are fundamental units of personality. These traits predispose one to act in a certain way regardless of the situation. So research has said that this has little influence us. And its weakness is that knowing traits is not always going to help predict behavior in particular situations. After watching that video, I think you can understand that. But its contribution is it emphasizes the importance of traits and the measurement of these dispositions. Now, your book goes into deeper the 5 models of personality components. So the big 5 traits of so the first one is called extroversion. These include traits as assertiveness, gregariousness, excitement, seeking positive emotionality. It predicts a capacity to master daily activities and be engaged in multiple activities. These are what like they consider high energy people. They go into action. Athletes are typically high on extroversion than non-athletes. Another particular study suggests that high endurance sports such as mountain climbing or exercisers that are high on extroversion are especially those that will exercise with other people. Now, Brad Statler found that compared to introverts, extroverts more often use the freedom of leisure for more highly stimulating and social activities compared to so they'll do more. Extroversion is also associated with a boredom of leisure. The next, sorry about that. The next analysis or trait to consider is what's called agreeableness. This is pro-social, and it includes trust, straightforwardness, altruism, and is contrasted with hostility, indifference, and self-centeredness. These people want to serve others. They volunteer or coach or teach in youth programs, which is important for us. We see that conscientiousness, this is the third member of the big 5. Conscientiousness factor is defined as order, dutifulness, achievement, striving, self-discipline, deliberation. This is interesting. People with higher scores are organized, responsible, reliable, where people with lower scores are likely to be impulsive and oriented towards immediate gratification. And they did research on video gaming, which I found was interesting, that regular players are slightly lower on conscientiousness than non gamers, with gaming addicts being considerably lower than both groups. Those high in this factor of conscientiousness embrace goal orientation and work ethic. As we said, they're committed runners or frequent exercisers. On the other hand, those that are higher in this may have difficulty with spontaneity and accommodating companions. So they may have a harder time letting go. The next one is neuroticism. Neuroticism is this tendency to experience distress. They might be more anxious, hostile, depressed, self conscious. Um, they have difficulty achieving the depth of involvement that's necessary to really be um, fulfilled and happy and enjoying something. They struggle with flow. Athletes that are have been shown to be low in neuroticism have been skiers, skydivers, and scuba divers. Um, they sometimes may feel less pleasure and enjoyment. Interestingly, the number 5 is openness to experience. Now, openness to experience has to do with this aesthetic sensitivity, this intellect dimension that they think about things, or this independence of intellect. They incorporate openness of new ideas, flexibility of thought, cultural interest, educational aptitude. They like to read, attend classes, listen, play music, and participate in high culture activities. It is possible, they suggest, that's negatively related to boredom proneness. Um, it's not generally related to sport participation, but ultra marathoners have been found to be high on these traits as well as gamers. So when we look at this take five, big five model, um, we need to consider locus of control. We need to consider this big five might be who we are or what we do, or maybe we have one or more of these personality components. Perfectionism has been one of the most widely studied personality characteristics in sports psychology. It's a multidimensional construct and it consists of various components, which include setting high standards, feeling concern over mistakes, being highly organized. There are 3 different types that I want to talk about. And the first one is what's called self oriented perfectionism. This is the degree that one sets high standards and stringently self evaluates relative to those standards. The next one is socially prescribed perfectionism. It's the degree that one perceived, or that which one perceives significant, holds significant others holds higher standards for the person and bases approval on meeting these standards. So if you look at self-oriented, we are self-evaluators. We evaluate ourselves to standards. Socially prescribed perfectionism, we base it on meeting the needs of other standards. And then other oriented, this is the degree that we hold to extremely high standards, so other than other people. Depending on the specific components characterized, one's perfectionistic personality, perfectionism can lead to both highly positive and extremely negative consequences. So it could cause some issues with regard to what we're doing. Um, there's a situational approach. So behavior is determined by the situation. If we looked at that triangle at the very beginning that I showed you, I'm going to go back to that. So we look at that social environment, we look at the social environment and the value of the social environment or the situation itself. So the behavior is determined by the situation or the environment. The situation is more important determinant of behavior than particular personality traits, which again, if you read, as you watch the video, you'll notice they talked about, is the situation important? Is it not important? Are our personality traits, can you decide on whether someone is right for the situation based on their personality? So this says that the situation is more important. It's not widely embraced by most sports psychologists. It has little influence in research because the situation is not always going to influence the individual behavior. Who we are makes a difference. This one emphasizes the importance of the situation itself, which the personality also is valuable. Rex, where are you going? So the interactional approach, really, this is a major contemporary sport and exercise favor. Sorry about that. When you look at the interactional approach, behavior is determined by both the person and the situational factors as well as their interaction. There's there is considerable influence, and this approach has been adopted by most contemporary sports psychologists. There is no weaknesses, and it does look at traits as well as situational variables and their interactions. Now, the phenomenological approach is a really cool approach, and this one it's determined by accounting for situation and personal characteristics. It kind of takes everything into consideration. So it's important to think about it's the person's understanding and interpretation or perception of their self and the environment that they're in. So it's valuable. The contribution is valuable. Some relationships exist between personality traits and states and sport performance. Um, you could be a type A personality. You could be, it seems that exercise and increased fitness appear to be associated with increased self esteem, especially with individuals that have low self esteem. So, this is just another approach that I like kind of talking more, going in a little bit deeper about how we approach these things. Now, when we look at attitudes toward leisure activities, um, it's it's this ever changing. So the book goes into one particular approach, and it's called the theory of planned behavior. Now, the theory of planned behavior is an extension of what's called um, a theory of reasoned action. It goes into what's called um, behavioral control, which we have beliefs, normative beliefs, and controlled beliefs. It goes into the intention that we can actually do whatever it is. Intention is this indication of a person's readiness to perform a given behavior and is considered to be an immediate antecedent of behavior. And then so when we look at our attitudes towards the behavior itself, um, our attitude makes a difference. Is the degree that we perform of a behavior positively or negatively valued? Do I think the behavior is going to be good for me? So my attitude towards whatever the behavior is, right? What am I going to do? Do I feel like I can do it? I'm going to run the Chicago Marathon. I don't know that I want to run the Chicago Marathon. But the belief of is subjective. It's really what do I believe in? What do we believe in? It's subjective. It's not objective. So it becomes from the person. Is the perceived social pressure to engage or not engage in that behavior? Do others think I should? Kind of thing. How much do I care of what other people think? So that's that subjective. And then the perceived behavioral control. This is people's perceptions of their ability to perform some given behavior. Do I have control over it? Can I do it? So these all move towards the intention to perform the behavior, but it makes a difference. Do I actually have control over it? Um, so as I was looking at interaction and as I was looking at what our roles are, I have cognitive strategies and mental strategies are among the most likely skills and behaviors that athletes have that they could use in competition. Although some of these may not necessarily be a personality trait, could be our attitudes, it could be our characteristics. Um, to enhance, what do we want to do? You want to enhance confidence and practice specific plans to deal with adversity during competition. You want to practice routines, maybe imagery, maybe visualization, something to deal with this distractions or special circumstances before and during competition. Concentrate wholly on the performance. Maybe that is visualizing. Use mental rehearsals before competition. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Focus on what you can control. Develop detailed competition plans and learn to regulate your arousal and anxiety. So, knowing who you are as we understand our own personality components, our extroversion or introversion, our agreeableness, our conscientiousness, our neuroticism, our being open to experiences. What's our approach to these? And then understanding our role. We need to consider personality and traits, situations. We need to be informed. We need to be a good consumer and a communicator and be a good observer. We need to be knowledgeable about mental strategies. So we need to think about personality causes or direct behaviors and experiences that relationships are implied is clearly complicated. Our personality dispositions and traits are a function of our social experience. Again, think about that triangle. Think about who we are, our personality core, our um, that social psychological environment. So our psychological core, our typical responses, and our role related behaviors. So our psychological core, who we are, how do we respond to situations, and our roles. So by knowing this, um, and I like this quote that no matter how different we are from each other, people are influenced by the various social settings, social roles they move in and out of during their daily lives. I hope you enjoy your week. And again, I look forward to hopefully talking to you either Monday or Friday. Come online and say hi, ask questions. Have a great day.